I am Professor Rajeev Dhawan. Okay.
Yeah, you just look at me. Yeah.
I am Professor Rajeev Dhawan. I am the Director of the Economic Forecasting Center and also the holder of the Zoerner Chair for Economic Forecasting at J. Mac Robinson College of Business, Georgia State University in downtown Atlanta.
They have stockpiles, but so this year, so in between, what they did was like they bought it from the Brazilians. So Brazilians sold even their own stock to them, and then they bought it from us.
I have a PhD in economics from UCLA. Before that, I have my master's and bachelor's from University of Delhi in India. That was my alma mater. That's where I got the training or the inkling to do economic forecasting. I had two professors who were students of a Nobel laureate and a very famous professor, another one. And they kind of like, when I asked them, I need to pursue this more, where should I go? And they said, go to the US. But here's the funny thing, when I got to UCLA, they told me, we don't do forecasting anymore, that's old stuff, you will have to do something new. So I did something new, finished my PhD, and one thing led to another. I found myself in an economic forecasting center at UCLA. It was called UCLA Business Forecasting Project, where I met my mentor, Larry Kimball, under whose tutelage I started. He was the best guide I could have because he never interfered. He let me be what I wanted to do. And here I am now, 25 years later, being the director of my own center for the last 19 years. So I thank him for giving me on-the-job training.
So Janet said, I don't think expansions just die of old age, to which Bernanke quipped, I'd like to say they get murdered.
So let me start with this thing. My main message was that when the economic expansion matures, any kind of a problem, which we call a shock in the economic language, any kind of a shock can have a little bit outsized consequences. For example, if the oil supply from Libya just vanishes tomorrow, or the Boeing 737 program does not get off the ground even after all the changes, these can ripple through the economy a little bit more quickly and a little bit more negatively than it would have been, say, about 3 years ago when the economy was really much stronger.
What is the health of the UK economy where everybody is hoarding stuff? So they're buying a lot of stuff, so you can see it in the orders, but nobody is expanding or investing.
Well, that's a very important question, and there are two ways to go about it. One is to look at our trade linkages with these countries, which have changed a lot in the last 15 years. 20 years ago, China was just a small part of our imports and exports. Now China is a big part of our imports. Now Chinese are buying stuff from every country. They produce the stuff and they sell it to the Western world, to Europe and the US. This kind of a phenomenon did not exist when I finished my PhD or even when I was initially practicing, because everything ran through Europe and the other standard channels. So that is one thing. So that's why it matters what happens to the health of China. Oil is still important because China is the biggest buyer on the margin. But the other thing is that the financial linkages in the world, now the financial flow of capital, is now very integrated. So, as I put it this way simply for the people, when we run a big trade deficit, the other side is holding more dollars. What are they going to do with it? How are they going to recycle them? That is an issue that wasn't there that much in the early 90s, but it's now a big number now. Mm-hmm. And with whom we are running the trade deficit? And what do they do with that money? Luckily for us, all the China and the other countries that we run the big deficits with seem to like our treasuries, seems to like to recirculate that money into our bond market. That has kept the interest rates much lower than when they would be. And that has helped the mortgage market, housing market, you name it. Interest rate channel is now working through a different way. It's the same channel, but the flow of funds over there are coming through a different way. It's not just domestic savings and domestic investment, it is foreign savings coming over here. And those linkages are becoming more important.
Car sales growth rate. If you are a growing economy, people usually buy cars. Whether it's electric or diesel or whatever it is, you buy it. What's been happening over there? Trend is really down. Last year was pretty bad. Okay. Now, what's the effect? So this is Apple revenue.
See, today I was talking about some of the unconventional indicators, For example, I was talking about, what happens to Boeing, Normally, it's very important to, what happens to Boeing and GE. But now, GE is on the decline, and Boeing is now the biggest company in terms of manufacturing, as I call it, visible too. They're going to sell about 600 planes this year, which are 737 MAX. If they have trouble selling them, there's going to be ripple effects in the economy. So I call these looking at these things a little bit more important. These are not your traditional indicators like a monthly report is coming out. You need to keep yourself aware, follow the company, and then look at the linkages. I talked about container movement in Port of Savannah. Yes, it's a Georgia metric, but it tells you the health of the international economy. It's another way of looking at it. I can quote you all the numbers from IMF report and other places and all that, and people say, how do I make sense of it? Where does it visibly show up? Well, it's going to show up in your backyard in lack of tonnage if the world economy is not booming. Bit. The holy grail is to find that leading indicator. And I tell you one thing, it doesn't exist. At least in the conventional data or with the conventional econometric tools. What exists is non-linear ways of looking at it, which the mind is very good at. Econometrics cannot keep up the pace with the way you're thinking, that how these three disparate facts mix together to form a nice story. This is what I call non-linear. You can do it better in your mind than you can do it on the computer still. And that's what some people call it the gut feeling and this thing. I call it like I'm just combining things in a different way and not bound by any rigidity or economic principles you have to follow, but not the economic doctrines or the dogmas or anything. Just be aware. I had never heard about a repo transaction till but now it's an important part of following the things, like what's happening in that market. You can see the gum up in the financial market show up over there first. Do we have databases on a in-time basis? No. But if you keep an eye on it, and you read about it, and somebody writes about it, you can better understand, this happened over there, maybe it's connected to that fact over there.
Okay? It all depends upon how these shocks impact the growth going forward. If it slows, which meaning is that my GDP forecast annualized is 1.516 with these rate cuts, how quickly do we slow down from the 2.5s down to...
Why do you want to be in economics? Okay. I am a big proponent that you don't have to have an econ degree or don't have to be practicing economist to become a forecaster. I have taken people with marketing degrees, finance degrees, and trained them to be economic forecasters. Okay. But that said, a good grounding in economics is important. But you're asking me about the advice I would give that person, like when I was starting in '96. I was given two words of advice by my mentor. One was, you're going to be wrong, but don't let that scare you. You need to speak your mind. If you feel that A leads to B, B leads to C, then say it. Don't be hesitant. Like they teach you in academia, that, hey, you don't have the full 100% proof for something, don't say it. No. You have to say when you believe it with a reasonable certainty. Okay, don't be shy about it, about your opinions. Number two was, develop a thick skin. Easier said than done. Because people will criticize you when you are wrong. So you just have to learn from what I don't call it mistakes. You try to learn from, why did my forecast not pan out that way? And if you can identify economic reasons, like, I misread this indicator, or this indicator was saying this thing, and this would happen, or this shock came in, you solve the mystery, which helps you in the next round of forecasting. But I also would say to that person, don't beat yourself over mistakes. Just because you didn't see it doesn't mean you are bad. That is a hard lesson I learned. In the early days, I would get obsessed with my misses and mope about it. I still get upset with the missus, but I don't mope about it.